Former Vice President Joe Biden is facing new criticism for comments he made in his first speech since he was accused of inappropriate touching by several women. At a conference of electrical union workers, Biden addressed the controversy with a joke.
I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie. We had permission. I don't know, man.
That remark, as you could imagine, drew swift criticism from the founder of the Me Too movement, as well as one of the women accusing him of unwanted touching. In a tweet, former Nevada state lawmaker Lucy Flores said, quote, "It's clear Joe Biden hasn't reflected at all on how his inappropriate and unsolicited touching made women feel uncomfortable. To make light of something as serious as consent degrades the conversation women everywhere are courageously trying to have." Let's bring in Joel Payne and Michael Graham. Joel is a Democratic strategist, former Hillary for America senior aide, and a vice president at MWWPR. And Michael is a CBSN political contributor, conservative columnist for the Boston Herald, and politics editor at nhjournal.com. Good to have you both with us. Joel, let's start with you. What do you think? Was Biden's comment out of touch and disrespectful, as some have suggested, or was he just playing the room?
No, I think he was being Joe Biden. I don't think it was out of touch or disrespectful, but it is out of the times. And this is the entire problem with Vice President Biden. He comes from a different era, an era where that type of joke or that type of comment would be more appropriate. And, you know, I think the story here with Lucy Flores is less about the touchy-feelingness and the inappropriate touching that is objectionable to some people, but the bigger story here is the generational divide. Beto O'Rourke would know better. Pete Buttigieg would know better. Obviously, some of the women in the field, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, would know better. That's Biden's bigger problem here. There's a narrative forming that he is an old dog and you're trying to teach him new tricks. And I think that today's speech was probably the latest example of how the vice president has a real hill to climb in terms of proving that he can be with the times.
I want to play for you some of what the president had to say before departing the White House for California Friday when asked if he was the best person to criticize Biden. Let's take a listen.
I think I'm a very good messenger, and people got a kick out of it. He's going through a situation. Let's see what happens, but people got a kick. We gotta sort of smile a little bit, right?
John, do you see Joe Biden as a threat? Do you see Joe Biden as a threat?
No, I don't see Joe Biden as a threat. No, I don't see him as a threat. I think he's only a threat to himself. I just don't see him as a threat. He's been there a long time. His record's not good. He'd have to run on the Obama failed record. You look at what happened with so many different things, North Korea, the Middle East, the economy never got going. No, I don't think Joe's a threat. I'd love him to be. I mean, look, I'd be happy with any of them, to be honest.
And Michael, to you now, what do you make of what the president said right there?
Well, first of all, that's why the people who voted for Trump, particularly in the Republican primary, voted for him. Pure shamelessness. He's not going to back down. Their first reaction when people say, how can Trump criticize Biden, is how can Democrats who supported Bill Clinton criticize Trump? So he's feeding that. The second thing is, I think Joel is absolutely right. Of the creepy Joe Biden problem, the creepy old guy problem, creepy is the least of the issues, because I've talked to so many Democrats about Biden. He has a real fan base up in New Hampshire where I'm watching the primary unfold. And no one thinks that he has a problem as far as, being sexualizing women or any of the issues that Trump and Clinton have had. But they pick right up on when he talks about it. He talks about, like, you can practically hear the old Fox News movie tone, da 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 in the background. He's there. It's like, wow, man, have you missed the moment? And that's his problem. I also want to throw something down here. Please stop excusing Biden's behavior as he's just too huggy or just too touchy. No, 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 no. The problem isn't that he hugged women. The problem is he smells their hair. He sneaks up, walks up behind them and puts his arms around. I mean, his behavior is just strange. We've been mocking it in the talk radio world for 10 years now. Welcome to the party, everybody else. This has been Joe Biden. He's not going to change.
Joel, a lot of Democratic hopefuls have said that this issue is up to Biden to deal with on his own. Do you get a sense that candidates are hesitant to weigh in on this? And if so, why?
Oh, they're playing the game the way you play it. Look, I worked on 2 of these presidential campaigns, and I'm sure, Michael, you've covered a lot of them. The way to do this is not to do the direct hit yourself. It's to keep it open so that others can do the direct hit. So, you know, Kirsten Gillibrand or Elizabeth Warren, they don't want to be the hatchet man on Joe Biden. They want to keep the story going so that people, you know, like us in the media can continue to do it. Because the honest to God's truth is Joe Biden is the titular front runner right now. Now, he's not in the race. And I think what the real indicator here is going to be is what do the public polls look like in a week or two? If those public polls start to submarine on Joe Biden, I think Team Biden, that inner circle of people who have been trying to draft him to run, they're going to start to reconsider what their move is here.
Do you see this issue going away anytime soon?
I do not see this going away in terms of being a talking point, but I do think that Vice President Biden handled it about as well as you could. The video this week was good. I think he needs to learn a lesson that a lot of politicians need to learn, is to learn when to stop apologizing. He's apologized on 3 different occasions now. I think if it's good enough for the people who he cares about, it's going to be good enough. And for those who it's not going to be good enough, another 5 apologies aren't going to help.
President Trump visited the U.S.-Mexico border in California Friday, and his visit comes a day after he said he would not shut down the southern border, which he had been threatening to do all week since last Friday. Michael, how do you see the president's supporters feeling about all of this back and forth?
Well, they love the fact that he's talking about it. Once again, back to the people who picked him. This is one of the things they picked him to do, to talk without embarrassment about the problem of illegal immigration, to not cave into the notion that simply pointing out that there is a problem somehow makes you racist or suspect. So he obviously loves talking about it, won't stop talking about it. But the real problem I think that he has created for himself is there's an issue that needs to be addressed, and everyone who's honest knows it. You have asylum rules that encourage families to take this dangerous trek to get here. We have a crisis going on right now. Don't take my word for it. Jay Johnson, President Obama's National Homeland Security person, acknowledges a problem. The only people who can fix that problem are Congress. But the more President Trump grandstands, the more he makes crazy comments, we're going to stop the border, shut it down, he takes the focus away. A more disciplined politician with a more disciplined team could really turn the light on Congress and say, look, here's what we need. It's a very simple bill. Here's 5 sentences, whatever. It will save lives. It will help stop this problem. But President Trump is never going to walk away, from the stage and let the spotlight focus anywhere else.
Earlier this week, the president appeared to back off his plans to revamp health care. He delayed a vote on it until after the 2020 election. Joel, to you now, do Democrats view this as a win?
I think Democrats view the idea that Donald Trump, within a week, took the story from the Mueller report to health care, to a flip-flop on health care, to a public fight with Mitch McConnell about health care. Yeah, look, this was a good development for Democrats because now every candidate worth their salt is going to be beating up the president on the campaign trail about the fact that Republicans don't actually want to commit to a solution on health care, whether it's Medicare for all, an Obamacare fix, or their own Trump care. Republicans have not demonstrated one iota of concern about fixing whatever that ails the health care system. And Democrats can continue talking about that. It was successful 5 months ago when they took the House in the 2018 midterms, and they feel like it's going to be successful for them again in this cycle at the top of the ticket and all the way down the ticket.
We're going to switch to Michael now. Michael, you also have some reporting on former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld. He's considering a potential primary challenge to President Trump. What can you tell us about that?
A new poll out this week that shows that 27% of Republicans in New Hampshire would be willing to vote for former Governor Bill Weld. And that's interesting on a couple of levels. One is President Trump's approval rating in New Hampshire is about as high as it is around the country, around 80% or so. But you've never seen any numbers that showed that people were willing to vote against him, to pick the other option. And so that's got people looking again at what's happening in New Hampshire. The other thing is the Buchanan benchmark. Pat Buchanan in 1992, he only got 37% of the vote. But that was enough to really stagger incumbent George H.W. Bush, who was viewed as unbeatable, particularly after the first Gulf War success. It really changed the narrative. And so you've got people now saying Bill Weld or someone like him might be able to hit the Buchanan benchmark and really cause problems for Trump down the line. Can they beat him in New Hampshire? Can they beat him in a primary? Maybe not. But there are no good stories that involve incumbent presidents being primaried seriously in their own party.
I think we've got Joel back with us, and that's a very good thing. Joel, we'll go to you now, and back to this question about Stacey Abrams. A lot of people are talking about her and that she's potentially weighing a run for the White House. What does she bring to the table, and what do you think her chances are of actually being successful here?
You know what we talked about at the top of the segment with Joe Biden, everything that he brings to the table? He brings the experience, but he also brings the baggage. Well, so Abrams, it's the exact opposite, right? She brings the energy. She brings fresh ideas. She brings the representation of groups that are going to be critical to Democrats winning this cycle, women, young people, minorities. What she does not bring is experience. She does not bring a lot of the kind of old baggage that someone like Biden does. So it's a double-edged sword. It works well for Stacey Abrams to be considered here, and I think that what we're going to see is that people are going to start to build some energy around the potential for an Abrams run.
Let's end with something for both of you. Every Friday, we're going to take a look at the 2020 Democratic hopefuls who have had a good week and a bad week. Joe, we'll start with you. Who had a good week? Who had a bad week?
Pete Buttigieg had a good week. I can pronounce his name now. That's a good week when you're getting people to figure that out right away. And his poll numbers steadily rising. Who had a bad week? Joe Biden. But he's also on the top of my who had a good week list. Why? Because people are talking about him as the nominee. In other words, what would you get if he were the nominee, the good and the bad? And when you think about a race that now, according to our website, we did an update today, 16 candidates in the race, simply being talked about at this point is a value, even if it's not all positive. Trust me, Julian Castro wishes that people were talking about him today as much as they're talking about Joe Biden.
We've got Joel back again, or are we going to?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. You know what? Michael knows this. When he starts talking, I just go away. I just try to ignore whatever.
Drifts off. He has no idea.
So what do you think? You agree with him? Who had a good week? Who had a bad week?
So my good weeks, obviously there were a couple. One, Pete Buttigieg. And, one of the things I've pointed out about Buttigieg is he's the only candidate that ever since he's been campaigning, he's made himself into a contender. Okay, all of the other people kind of are where they have been in the race. No one else has really moved around too much. Buttigieg has certainly made a surge. I think also Elizabeth Warren, while she hasn't gotten the traction in the polls, and Michael, you've written a lot about this, she is setting the pace for the rest of the field with some of her policy ideas. She's really put some strong proposals out there. Kamala Harris and others have as well. But, I worked for John Edwards in 2007 and 2008. And while we didn't win, big surprise, President Edwards, we certainly set the tone on issues like health care, kind of holding corporations accountable. Those are things that Elizabeth Warren is doing to influence the field. So they had good weeks so far as I can tell.
Joel Payne and Michael Graham, we will leave it there officially. Good conversation. Thank you both.